On today's DNVR Broncos podcast, we are breaking down RJ Harvey. Sean Payton has heard an interesting comp for him. Could RJ Harvey be the next Darren Sproles? Plus, we're talking to our draft expert, Fran Duffy, to break down the Broncos draft, and it all starts now. Did the Broncos land the next Darren Sproles? We're going to break it down on the DNVR Broncos podcast, live from the Toyota Lounge inside the DNVR Bar. We've got Ryan Koenigsberg to my left, Henry Chisholm to my right, Dion and here behind the camera, and Zac Stevens rocking and rolling with you today, fellas. How we doing?
I'm doing great. It's RJ Harvey hype day, and I'm incredibly hype about RJ Harvey.
And it's a really good day.
Yeah. That all adds up. No, RJ Harvey's the dopest, I think.
Great. Well, I can't wait to jump in, and let's just do that right now. Why are you hyped on him, Ryan?
Well, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think he's Ashton Jeanty light, and I think he's going into a better situation than Ashton Jeanty. And the way that this guy plays is so fun to watch. And you think about, like, your favorite running backs. They just have this certain style about them. Mm-hmm. And it's this combination of power and speed and shiftiness and, the highlight moves where he goes one way in the hole, then right back the other way to make the linebacker miss. And all of that stuff just adds up to make RJ Harvey an incredibly exciting prospect. And maybe one day I'll stop making this Ashton Jeanty comp. But today's not that day.
Wait, what? Why though? Why are you comparing him to Ashton Jeanty?
Because Ashton Jeanty is the belle of the ball.
No, I mean, you look at the builds, you look at the way, like, first of all, just the size. You look at kind of the proportions. I think Jeanty's like 7 pounds, 10 pounds heavy or something like that. But the running style, the way that they can go left and right so quickly and just make guys miss, combined with the power that both of them have, I think that's really where you see the Jeanty stuff. Now, Jeanty is... Yeah, where looking at Darren Sproles, when RJ Harvey gets like one hand on him or a shoulder on him, Jeanty might just not get touched, and that's where you see like that little difference. But no, I mean that's the exact style of runner utilized in probably the exact same way that I think you'd probably use a Harvey.
I don't know. I think it's lazy. I don't think
really.
I don't think just because they're in the same draft class
and they're the very similar size.
You could go Maurice Jones-Drew instead if you want.
They're not very similar size.
What do you mean?
What is Ashton Jeanty? 5'11"?
Well, you tell me, because you just said they're not similar, so you should know.
Well, 5'11"?
No, 5'9".
No. Who?
Jeanty.
Jeanty's probably 5'8".
Yeah.
Yes.
No way.
Yes.
No way.
Yes. 5'9", 215, and RJ Harvey is 5'8", 205.
Yeah. I just don't think when I watch RJ Harvey, I see even more explosive than Ashton Jeanty.
And that's what I'm
true.
about to get to. He is more explosive than Ashton Jeanty.
Official from the combine, 5'8.5" for Jeanty, 211.
Wow. Okay.
211.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, almost the exact same size. Ashton Jeanty, 10-yard carries this year, 10+ yard carries.
Yep.
55.
Yep.
On 313 carries. RJ Harvey, 10+ yard runs, 54 on 231 carries.
Yep.
So significantly less carries, basically the same explosive production.
Yep.
Carries of 15 yards or more. 33 out of 313 for Jeanty. 32 out of 231 for RJ Harvey. And finally, carries per touchdown. 10.5 carries per touchdown for RJ Harvey. 11.1 carries per touchdown for Ashton Jeanty. All of those metrics, RJ Harvey outperforms in the explosive categories. And just to frame it a different way, RJ Harvey carries per 10-yard run, 4.28. Just keep playing the slot machine. He's going to break one. Carries per 15-yard run, 7.2. It's just really, really impressive how explosive he is. And to me, that was the thing that everyone loved so much about Ashton Jeanty. Of course, it's his ability to break tackles is probably number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is once he broke those tackles, then he kept going to the end zone. And that's what RJ Harvey does. So that's why I make the comp. 1, because they're very similar in size. 2, because I think they look similar on tape. 3, because they're now in the same division. And 4, because everyone was so into Ashton Jeanty, myself included, going to the Broncos. I think they basically got him in a slightly lesser version.
Was Boise State's offensive line just much smaller than UCF? Because when you watch the tape, RJ Harvey looks way smaller, way shorter.
Offensive line, it's the defensive players they were playing against.
No, it's the offensive line. He looks so tiny behind that or so short. I shouldn't say tiny because he doesn't look small. He just looks short. But I actually think that's a good thing when I say that, because the offensive line doesn't need to know where RJ Harvey is. They know where he's going to be because of what the play is called. It's the defensive line that needs to find where he is, and he just gets lost behind the offensive line and then does such a good job of finding the open lane. Because there's a lot of times where that UCF offensive line doesn't block very well for him, and he needs to find that hole, even if that's not how the play is designed. So that's why I was just so surprised that their height's the exact same, because when I watched the film, he just looks so much shorter in a good way. You talk to defenders, they hate playing against short guys. At least Derrick Henry, they can see where he's going. They just can't stop him once they touch him. With RJ Harvey, he just pops out, and then because he has that 4.4 speed, he's so explosive. Once you see him, he's gone.
Yeah.
So many times. And that points to all the stats that you said about how most 15-yard runs, most 10-yard runs in the nation.
Yeah, and so yesterday I said the whole thing of like if RJ Harvey was at Boise, I think the actual comparison is if RJ Harvey just got the same amount of carries.
Jeanty did have more yards per carry.
Yes.
Because he was first among the top 20 in like total rushing, but Harvey was second. So I mean, like, the gap is not that big.
By the way, shout out to Matt H who put me on to these stats.
We love a guy who puts us on to stats.
We do.
That is always fun.
I'm just saying, if you had given them the exact same production or the exact same touches, the production would have been almost the exact same.
Well, and then how about this? I mean, you talk about playing in the Mountain West. And Ryan, I know you like to put the Mountain West down a little bit sometimes. Well, Ashton Jeanty was playing in the Mountain West where RJ Harvey was not. He was playing in a Power 4 conference last year.
Those tough Big 12 defenses.
You think they're
I mean,
easier than the Mountain
no,
West?
This is the
they're better than the Mountain
2014
West.
Big 12.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm biased because I mostly watch the Buffs play games, and a lot of their games turned into shootouts. But yeah, I mean, it isn't what it used to be. Again, it's not like you're playing the ACC where they literally just suck at football. It's almost like Power 2 next. Yeah.
We don't have to get into the whole conference.
No,
thing,
we
but-
don't.
No, but I think when you compare the two, I do think it's fair to say that he probably played more difficult RJ Harvey played more difficult competition.
I think it's the exact reason why you think he looks smaller on the field.
Maybe. Because going up against bigger guys?
Yeah, exactly.
I see what you mean.
Yeah. And I think just going back to the Jeanty thing.
Maybe his offensive line's bigger.
For sure,
Yeah.
and it probably is.
Yeah. Again, you're talking 4.4 flat speed, which is pretty crazy. That's the time Saquon ran at the combine. Like, that's the type of breakaway speed you're looking at. There are only 3 guys in the draft who are faster. That is kind of the separator with Jeanty, with the flip side being that where, RJ Harvey has good contact balance, Ashton Jeanty has like incredibly rare contact balance.
Elite.
Like the shiftiness, like all that stuff where RJ Harvey's like, oh, he's good between the tackles because of what he does in these 5 categories. That's where Jeanty is just like, oh, actually, this might be the best we've seen in a decade or something. Like, there's a chance at least. So I do think that it's definitely the same like archetype. Again, because we talked all about Maurice Jones-Drew before the draft. Like, is he kind of the floor for an Ashton Jeanty? That's a guy who's 5'7", 207 compared to RJ Harvey, 5'8", 205. Like 4.39 40 for Maurice Jones-Drew, where it's 4.40 for Harvey. So you're in that kind of same little class of running backs where you see like, okay, this is, you run between the tackles, you get outside, you hit big plays, and you can kind of do anything.
Yeah, and that's where like the idea of like a small running back is just very different depending on who we're actually talking about. Maurice Jones-Drew is a small running back. Doesn't play small at all. And because he has such a low center of gravity, he's so hard to tackle. He had massive, quads, which I think RJ Harvey, not in that category, but for his size,
along those lines,
very stout in the lower body. So there's a difference between a small scat back, in my opinion, kind of like Darren Sproles, where I don't, necessarily buy into this comp as much.
Same.
And a short back who is still stout.
Well, and we'll get into the Darren Sproles after we talk to Fran, because Sean Payton was the one that actually brought that comparison up, and we'll actually hear from Sean. We have that clip so we can get it in its full context there. But the thing about RJ Harvey that just makes it so exciting is he's an do-it-all type of running back, and especially the biggest thing when you think of he's not small. What we just need to say about him, and maybe you guys aren't comfortable saying it because you're taller, but I can say it because I'm his height. He's short. He's a short running back, but he's built out. So not small, but short. And again, RJ, you and I both 5'8" right there.
Which is the average height for men, right?
Yeah.
I'm average. Okay.
Not even short.
So he's just an average human.
Kind of short when you get into the NFL and, you're
that's
standing
true.
next to Caleb Lohner.
Yeah, when Derrick Henry's, that's true. And Derrick Henry is a person that plays the same position and might be asked to do the exact same things as 6'3", 250 pounds. He's, what is that?
Crazy.
7 inches shorter? 8 inches shorter? Oh my goodness, that's insane. But he can do it all. He can run in between the tackles. He can run outside. He can catch the ball. He didn't have very many attempts. I think like 19 passes caught last year, but Sean Payton talked about he has soft hands. They're comfortable with his hands coming out of the backfield, and his hands are not something I'm worried about at all. I think he can do those receiving things out of the backfield that Sean's going to ask him to do.
Yeah, that was one of my kind of favorite quotes from Sean when they were talking about him, because RJ Harvey wasn't asked to receive the ball a lot last year. It goes back, I don't remember who we were talking about in the pre-draft process, but I used the Karl Anthony Towns comp, where it was like Karl Anthony Towns was never asked to shoot threes in college. And so it just like wasn't really part of his profile. Then he just like comes into the NBA, becomes a knockdown 3-point shooter because you need that now in the NBA. RJ Harvey wasn't really asked to receive the ball in college, but Sean said at his pro day he was running the whole route tree.
Yeah,
and that is exciting to me, and that is where scouting and trust and the Sean Payton eye is very valuable.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to Ashton Genty, who same thing during this whole process when that was the guy that we really wanted. Is Ashton Genty a joker? It's like, well, maybe, but there's nothing on tape that says like, yes, here he is doing that, just because he wasn't asked to. Because if you have Ashton Genty, what do? Just hand him the ball and good things will happen. Don't mess around with throwing it to him when you could just hand it to him. Same thing with RJ Harvey, who, we ran through some of these stats yesterday, but this was by far the best player on a terrible team, and still no defense could stop him.
Exactly. Let's break
Except Colorado.
Except Colorado.
It didn't really stop him. 160 yards.
Slowed
him down the most.
One play.
One play?
It was like a 75-yard touchdown.
Okay.
Other than the 70, that reminds me.
Still 90 yards. But we will continue to break him down. Hear from Sean. We're going to hear from Fran after I give a shout out to our friends over at, Monster Jam. You've got to check out our friends over at Monster Jam.
They're all over the country.
And yes, they are all over the country. So you got to get in and see them. You can click the link in our description if you want to go get a Monster Jam ticket. 12,000 pounds. That's how big their trucks are. And you can see Gravedigger, El Toro Loco, Sparkle Smash, and more. Monster Jam is as big as it gets. Start your day off at Monster Jam Pit Party and then end it with a post-event driver meet and greet. They've got it, something for everyone. This is such a fun and cool event, so make sure to check them out and click the link in our description, and make sure to see Monster Jam wherever you are.
Wherever you are. And also shout out to Shady Rays. If you're going to Monster Jam, you might want to bring some sunglasses with you because, that I'd imagine that mud and dirt just gets splashed everywhere. You need a little eye protection. You could wear some of those Shady Rays goggles. When Monster Jam almost sounds like the thing that could be being sprayed at you. Monster Jam. That's what I call the stuff in the dirt and the mud. Shady Rays is awesome. They're great sunglasses. It's sunny season here. I'm not sure what I'm doing today exactly, but I do know that at some point I'm getting to Illegal Pete's and then getting to this Nuggets game. And I'd imagine before that I'll be doing something where I'll want some sunglasses. Maybe even just on the walk. Shady Rays the best. 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Durable frames, crystal clear optics. All sorts of reasons to buy them, including styles in your favorite team's colors. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code DNVR for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The Shade's rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
Someone's getting mad in the Twitter chat saying,
good.
Stop comparing him to Darren Sproles. Don't blame us. We're going to play the clip from Sean, but before we do, want to go out and talk to our guy, Fran Duffy, draft expert. Fran, I know the work's not done for you yet. You're still grading, reviewing everything. You're going to be doing it probably for a while before jumping into next year, but congratulations on making it through the draft. How are we feeling now?
Great job. Great job.
Appreciate it, guys. Yeah, look, a little more well rested than I was a couple days ago, but yeah, I've been getting through some of the stragglers, some of the players that I didn't get a full study on. I'm going to be honest, I didn't get through all the Cody Lohner tape before the draft, but was able to knock that out yesterday. So honestly, all of my draft grades for the Denver Broncos should be up shortly on the site for diehard. So stay tuned for that, and I'll be writing up some of the UDFAs as well, all the UDFAs. So I'll have a report up on the site, just kind of a quick blurb on all the undrafted free agents that the Broncos bring in this week.
Let's go. I'm going to be tuning into that right after this show. And Fran, the good thing is about Caleb Lohner, only 57 snaps that you have to watch, so
Yes.
that one won't take too long. But I want to start with a big picture approach. How did the Broncos do? You said you're going to be dropping individual grades. Collectively, it doesn't have to be a grade, but it can be a grade. How did the Broncos do in this draft?
You know, I wasn't as high on every single one of their picks when I compare it to some of the other teams, in the network. But it was one of those things. Basically, the way I broke up the grades, guys, was that I did a love it, where it's like, okay, like I saw I agreed with the evaluation, I agree with the value, and I agree with the fit, right? Then there were some where it's like, all right, I see the vision. Maybe I didn't see the value, but I see what the team thinks, right? Or maybe I didn't love the evaluation, but I could see how you kind of got there. And then it was, all right, let me check back in a couple of years, because there are plenty of times where I just don't quite see it the way that the team saw it, and I'm wrong. There are some where, hey, it turns out that it went the other way, right? So more of those picks than others, I feel like fell into that third category with me with the Broncos. But time will tell. I did love a couple of selections on day 3 in particular. I love the Q Robinson selection, but I was able to talk that up with Henry and with Dre over the course of draft weekend.
Yeah, and it was fun to have all your perspective on there, and it was fun to be able to talk about all the guys myself too. But then you realize that you get on the show and there are a lot of people watching today who weren't there for hour 3 of the day 3 draft live show. So I kind of want to get your initial reaction again. I guess not initial anymore, but starting with Jahdae Barron. We talked a lot about him Thursday night, but can you give us a quick recap of your thoughts there?
Yeah, Jahdae Barron, honestly, I watched him as much as any player in the entire class. When you're talking about it, this is somebody that I've studied for 3 years. And then as we got into this season, he wins the Thorpe Award as the top defensive back in college football. And I'm going to be honest, like people were talking about him as a first-round talent. I didn't quite see it. And so let me go back and I'll watch a little bit more. Let me watch 2 more games. Let me watch all of his targets. Let me watch all the run defense. Let me just continue. I've got a great appreciation for his style. I usually love guys, DBs, corners that are always around the football, that are consistently productive, that play competitive and feisty. All of these things describe Barron. I just never saw him as like, oh yeah, he's going to be an elite nickel corner in the NFL. I think he can be a solid nickel. I do think he could be like a starting quality corner. But I never saw like a true difference maker. Like I know there's comparisons out there to like Brian Branch. I never quite saw that. I don't know that he's going to be like what Kenny Moore has been for the Colts. I do think he can be a starting nickel corner. I'm sure that Sean Payton, they probably see like a honey badger type of role for him in the middle of that defense. I just never quite got there with him. I think the further away from the football he got, the more I questioned his ability to be effective. I know he was more productive this year. He had more picks this year than he had in his entire 4-year career prior to that. But 3 of those 5 picks, it came again in 2 games against Georgia. One, he was the only player in the vicinity. One came off a tip throw. The other, the receiver fell down after running into Barron at the top of the route, right? So, not necessarily things where I look at it as translatable. I think he's really aggressive in underneath zone. I love him attacking the line of scrimmage, playing downhill. And I've talked with some scouts that view that he might be best as a safety moving forward in the NFL, like 2-3 years from now, if he becomes like what Quandre Diggs did when he came out of Texas a few years back. So who knows? That could be something that's in the future for Barron. I just never saw, especially a top 20 type of talent overall.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about RJ Harvey. That's been our guy today, and I wasn't on the show when you broke down that pick. So curious to hear where you are at with him, because I know I can speak for myself. I'm incredibly high on him.
Yeah, he was a guy, RK, where it was honestly not all that dissimilar from Barron for me, where it was like as the process went on, it felt like he was everybody's favorite running back's favorite running back was RJ Harvey, right? Like any former running back that got in front of a microphone in the last 2 months was like, yeah, I'm going to talk about Ashton Genty, I'm going to talk about Hampton, and we're going to talk about all these guys. But man, my favorite sleeper is RJ Harvey, right? And when I started Harvey in the fall, I liked him. I didn't love him. There are some things in the profile that are just a little concerning for me. Obviously, he's a little bit older. He's a 24-year-old rookie, sixth-year senior. But you can contextualize that. Like, all right, so he came into college as a quarterback. He had the ACL. He transferred. So it's like, all right, like that explains why, you're getting someone that's a little bit older. For me personally, for a guy that's as small as he is, I didn't see someone that always played to that 4.4 flat speed. I think he is a little bit tight. Honestly, like I know that there was the comparison Sean Payton threw out, with Darren Sproles. I thought, and this is someone I watched Darren Sproles. It was in the back end of his career, but for a handful of years in Philadelphia, and obviously watched him throughout his career, in New Orleans and with the Chargers. He was just so much looser. Like it was like da, 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 like he had that like instant change of direction, really fluid, fluid ability in and out of breaks. I just thought that Harvey was a little bit tighter, a little bit more straight line. I do like his vision and patience. I fully agree with the way that they described him after, saying that he was the most patient, decisive running back in the draft, exactly how they put it, after the draft on Friday night. But outside of that, like I struggled with Harvey as a round 2 type of player. That said, if I'm going to trust any running back or any coach with a running back, it's going to be Sean Payton. So I'm excited to see how they use him.
So, Fran, with RJ Harvey, is he the Broncos' day one starter?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I guess so, right? I mean, if you're looking at this backfield right now, if you're going to spend that kind of asset on a running back, and that's the thing is, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, the calculus that George Payton, Sean Payton, the entire Broncos staff made in the lead up to the draft was, okay, if we really love Jahdae Barron and we really love Omarion Hampton and we really love Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren, who insert tight end here, let's play this out. Let's plot this out. If we take Barron, who's the running back we get on day 2? All right. Well, if we take Hampton, who's the nickel corner that we can get on day 2? For me personally, I think that where you get more ROI, and this all comes down to my personal evaluation, and I'm very open to being wrong, obviously. But I think you get more return on your investment with a Hampton in the first round or a Travion Henderson even in the first round. Then you can get, the nickel corners that went late round 2, early round 3. You look at like Upton Stout and you look at Parrish from Kansas State. You go through, there were a couple guys that went in that area. I just think that the difference there is just, I think it's pretty sizable. So if I'm looking at Harvey, I think if I'm looking at the other options, yeah, he probably is the starter, and I think that's a great role for him. If we're talking like fantasy football production and like trying to project some of these rookies out, I'd be excited about RJ Harvey. I just kind of get into like what the return on investment is there with Barron and Harvey versus what could have been with like Hampton and Parrish. I think there's a sizable difference there.
I think part of the reason I'm so excited about Harvey is that he was just as productive when he ran right up the middle, like A and B gaps, as he was when he ran outside. And I think that's the piece for me where I say, okay, you have the home run hitting stuff outside. That 4.4 flat 40, hey, we saw it on tape. You can fly. You can get upfield. You can pull away from guys. At his size, do you think that translates, the middle of the field ability translates to the NFL? Do you think that he can continue to be, essentially an every down back? Not that the Broncos would use him that way, but a guy who's at least capable of doing just about anything you ask of him.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing that got me was like at that size, like, all right, like he's going to be a certain kind of back. I do think because of his patience, his vision, his ability to create those big plays, I do think that that's something where he is going to, that is going to translate, right? But it's just a matter of what does that workload look like? Now, Sean Payton has said numerous times that, hey, like we're not going to be a bell cow back operation. Like we are going to be a committee approach. That's why they wanted to target the running back position. And so, when I look at Harvey, the big thing that does stand out, if I'm looking at like his analytical profile, his ability to create explosive plays. 21% of his touches, 21% of his career touches were explosives. Like we're talking like 15 plays. That's like exorbitant number, huge number. And so you're saying, all right, like if we could project that forward, if we think that even if it's not going to be 21% of his touches in the NFL, but if we think that, I don't know, like 12, 13%, 14% of his touches are going to go for explosive gains, that's a huge boom for our offense, whether we're looking at him in the pass game or in the run game. I do think that, that one cut ability will fit well with some of their zone concepts in that offense. I think that if you're going to work him out of the backfield on like wheel routes and kind of get creative with him that way, I'm going to be honest, like watching him on tape, that didn't necessarily stand out to me as part of his skill set. Watching him work out at the combine, I thought he was a little bit clunky with his routes and, fought the ball a little bit. So I don't know that he's Darren Sproles as a pass catcher, where he was lightning. He was automatic at catching passes out of the backfield. He was such a good route runner. So I don't know if that aspect of his game is something I'm necessarily counting on, but I do think that explosibility will translate.
And Fran, final one for you here. Who's Fran's favorite draft pick of the Broncos? You can take value. You can take it any way you want here.
I would say, I definitely think the Caleb Lohner pick is fun, right? But that's not my favorite pick.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fun, right? The guy's played, like you said, Zach. He's played 54 snaps. I was able to get through that after lunch yesterday. Like I'm sitting there like chowing down on like whatever the hell I ate for lunch yesterday, and I was like, oh, this is before I finish my food. It's all done, but. I really like the Q Robinson pick. Like when you get into round 4, like maybe that's a little bit early, but you always know, like at that position, guys are going to go a little bit earlier. And he's got traits. This is a player that has length. He's got some explosiveness. He's going to line up off the edge, 2-point stance. It's not all that dissimilar from, like the Nick Benito usage. Even like if I think to like Baron Browning when he first got there, like that kind of usage where he's going to be a long linear frame. For a guy who has not played a lot on defense, this guy, he like tempos his rushes pretty well. He can set up speed to power pretty well. He can set a strong edge in the run game. So I think there's an upside there that can be tapped. But then also he's got a high floor because he's played more special team snaps than any edge rusher drafted in the last decade. That he can come in and be a core 4 special teams player for you. So I think there's a floor for him to make the roster. I think there are tools there for him to become, like, if not a starter, then an impact role player off the edge. And so there's definitely something to work with when you talk about this player, Q Robinson.
Yeah, I love hearing that. And actually, the Toyota chat seems very split and polarized over that pick. So I look forward to diving into Q even more moving forward. Always a pleasure talking to you, Fran. And next week, maybe we'll get into some of the real sicko stuff, the undrafted free agents. Dive into that after you've had time to watch them. But we'll stay tuned for your grades and your UFA evaluations over at thednvr.com. Thanks for joining us today, Fran.
Appreciate it, guys. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Fran.
Always great to talk to Fran. Did he have? We need the microphones like he has. Did you see his? His looked like the little siren that they have after a goal is scored at the Avs game.
I didn't notice that whatsoever.
Wow.
Yeah, let me know.
Seems like
that would
stand out too.
It very much stood out. It was like it was like a little lightning rod alert that he was talking into the whole time.
All right.
We need whatever PHLY has over there.
Wow.
So I don't see any Shady Rays. But you here? Can you grab us some Shady Rays? Because we need maybe a little cleanser. We need to see how the future is bright.
Yeah, we do.
After getting a dose of reality. I don't know if that's reality or just an outside perspective.
Yeah, a
different
differing opinion.
Yep. Yeah. So we're going to dive into the future is bright after I give a shout out to our friends over at Empire Today, where our friends over at Empire Today have you hooked up. If you need new floors, Empire Today is going to get you taken care of. The home floor advantage. Boy, the Nuggets need that tonight. They've got the home court advantage tonight. You need the home floor advantage over at Empire Today. And they have experts where what they do is flooring. So you don't have to go into a big box store and not know what you're getting yourself into. Empire Today will have you taken care of when it comes to floors, and they're going to take care of you even more because if you use the code DNVR over at empiretoday.com/DNVR, schedule a free home estimate, you're going to get $350 off and get a free home estimate by going to empiretoday.com/DNVR and then use that code DNVR to get $350 off your new floors. Why doesn't someone tell us about UC Health?
Shout out to UC Health. I'm all about health, as we all know. Let's see. Did I do anything? I'm not gonna lie. The draft was not the healthiest because you wind up just staying up all night. And here's the weird thing: is both times that I had to like go to sleep. So like the second night of the draft, for example, I was like 1:30 a.m. I was crashing, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna sleep at 1:30. I'm gonna set an alarm for 5 to get up so I can get back to the film room. And I was like, okay. But both times I crashed like that right after I drank a Red Bull, which doesn't make any sense because I was like, you feel yourself starting to fade and you're like, this will fix it. Point is,
UC Health's about being healthy, not being unhealthy.
Oh, no.
Here.
And so I'm talking about how I was unhealthy over the draft weekend and I'm getting better.
Good job.
Yeah.
We're
so like today, I'm going to Illegal Pete's. I'm just getting rice, beans, chicken, some salsa. And I think that's pretty good for you comparatively.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah. Drinking more water.
Throw some lettuce in there.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see about that.
Yep.
Some onions. I could do some onions.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, UC Health, they want you to live like there is a tomorrow because regardless of what you're going through, there is a tomorrow. UC Health, the best for so many reasons. UC Health, the official... We are brought to you by UC Health, the preferred partner of athletes in Colorado. For inspiring health stories, go to uchealth.org for more info. UC Health, live extraordinary.
And speaking of the opposite of being healthy, people are asking if Henry is hungover because he's wearing the glasses. It's actually the opposite. The future's just so bright, Henry.
Yeah. So
tell us why the future is so bright, Henry.
First of all, whoever works with us who wears these needs to learn how to handle sunglasses because these are smudged to hell, if I'm being honest. You just can't see anything.
It's just they belong to the studio and no one takes care of anything around here.
That's
very true. It's very unfortunate.
And
Look at these ones. I want to get them as close to the camera. We got the orange and blue tint on them.
Yeah, and
it's like the tortoise with orange and blue. Shady rays. I don't know if you can see. You just got to take my word for it.
The tortoise shell is your vibe.
I love tortoiseshell.
Yeah,
are these tortoiseshell?
Not really.
These
don't
are.
ask me.
Kinda.
Yeah, I guess they kind of are. Do you know what tortoise is, Henry?
Yeah. They're the big things on the ground, but then tortoiseshell would be
usually in the water
pattern. No, tortoises love the dry land.
Oh, okay. That's the other way around.
Yeah.
They're the ones with legs.
They are the ones
rather than flippers.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
I had it backwards in my head.
Wow.
What?
See, you learn something every day.
Oh, I didn't know there was a difference.
Tortoise is like a big desert tortoise that's like on the so you remember the phrase sea turtle?
Yes.
You never hear sea tortoise. That's an easy way to remember.
Have you ever heard of the phrase sea turtle?
Yeah, sea turtle all the time. You ever watch Nemo?
I wouldn't say sea turtle is a phrase.
I think sea turtle might be an official name.
An animal
is a thing. Yeah.
So if you heard the thing sea turtle, then that'll help you remember that turtles are the ones in the water, and then you'll know the tortoise is the dry land.
I think in my head I thought sea turtle was just a different name for tortoise.
I'm so confused.
They could not be. I mean, no.
Here we go from Jose. Tortoise is land. Turtle is in water.
Maybe I was thinking of a porpoise.
That's they love water.
Very different, right?
They do like the water.
So
yes.
Henry, tell us why the Broncos' future is so bright
because
that you have to wear shady rays. And if you want to wear shady rays, use the code DNVR to get 35% off. So tell us why the future is bright.
So, obviously it's the draft picks. The draft picks are why you're so excited because I think it's pretty easy to see how this could be one of those franchise-changing classes. Now, the Broncos certainly called their shots on a couple of them. You know, Jahdae Barron, some people had him top 10. Some people had him not as a first-round pick. And that's the tough part of evaluating a slot corner. Yes, he maybe struggles a little bit in the off coverage or man coverage. But I think a lot of that is just because he didn't have many reps before this year. And he looked raw, and all the times he was able to break on the ball as quickly as he did, kind of bail himself out, that's what you get excited about. And you know that when you're playing him in that nickel spot, there are less of those situations, especially early in career before you try bouncing him outside, that you can see the physicality coming downhill. You can see, again, the way he jumps routes and breaks on balls. There's enough of that sort of stuff to get you excited. And I think the big thing is just that it changes the way that you can play your defense. If Pat Surtain is guarding Ladd McConkey against the Chargers, and Ladd motions into the slot, and all of a sudden you've got your slot corner playing on the boundary against a pretty fast receiver who you thought was going to be in the slot, whatever. Well, now you can trust Jade because he's fast enough to run with that guy. You don't all of a sudden have to shift things around, or the safety doesn't need to cheat that way. And I think it isn't so much about just like the player himself, although it is. It just adds a dynamic to the defense that they thought they were missing. So there's why we're excited about Jade Barron.
Boom, I love it. That's why the future is bright for this Broncos defense. That's brought to you by ShadyRays.com. Use that code DNVR for 35% off. Speaking of Jade, really quick.
So you're both saying it wrong.
Jade.
There you go.
Jade Barron. I just have to remember when Sean said it. Man, he did it with such a French.
Yeah.
Jade.
Jade.
There we go. I think the Broncos need to thank Jerry Jeudy for this pick.
Okay.
And the reason is, Henry talked about it. If Ladd McConkey or Jerry Jeudy slides from the outside to the inside, you're not in trouble anymore. And the Broncos were in big time trouble. Obviously, they were without Riley Moss, so the Broncos were already shorthanded. But then when they slid Jerry Jeudy in motion, it just instantly messed up the Broncos' coverage last year. That's something that drove Sean Payton crazy. He went crazy on Vance Joseph after the game in terms of just not being able to adjust to that in the game enough. And then Jerry went for over 200 yards. And Sean knows that Jerry Jeudy can be slowed down because he saw it for a season in Denver. That without that game, I honestly don't think the Broncos pick him.
Wow.
I think they value something else. Sean mentioned how there was a possibility of a trade back and then drafting a running back, which would have been Travion Henderson, I'm told. I think that without that Jerry Jeudy game, the Broncos don't get him. And we've seen what a secondary like this can do. Last time the Broncos were this invested in a cornerback room and a secondary, Super Bowl 50.
I love it. And I think there's one part that has been overlooked in the conversations about Jade Barron. And it's the history of cornerbacks in Denver, Colorado. You know how colleges call themselves like CBU, DBU?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If there was a version of that for the NFL, that would be the Denver Broncos. It goes, you can go as far back as you want, but I'll just go Champ Bailey. From Champ Bailey on, you had Chris Harris, you had Aqib Talib, you then have Pat Surtain, you now have Jade Barron. All of those things, like, to me, it's the Champ Bailey legacy. And when you see corners play for the Denver Broncos, they play a certain brand of football. The corners are tough. They are not afraid to get their nose dirty in the run game. They are great tacklers. To me, that's the Champ Bailey thing. And he passed that on to Chris, and that continues to get passed on down the line for the Denver Broncos. And Jade Barron plays that style of football. And so he's such a perfect fit for what Denver Broncos football is for a corner. And I don't mean to just single out one person here, but like a lot of people are like, oh, why don't we get Kobe Bryant? Why wouldn't we get Kobe Bryant? He doesn't play that style of football. And I think that matters. Like I really do think that there's like a tradition of a certain type of corner that the Denver Broncos have. And Jade Barron fits it perfectly.
Well, to be clear, real quick, we're talking Kobe Bryant, the draft prospect, who a lot of people may not have heard of, and we're really shocked to hear why didn't we get Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, he's the second Kobe Bryant at corner to come out of the NFL draft in the last few years.
That is crazy. When it comes to tackling, Sean was asked how important is tackling for a corner because Jade Barron does have that. Sean said, "Oh, that's a prerequisite in my defense," and that's what you see from Sean's defenses. They are tough. You can't have a weak link who just doesn't want to tackle. That's not going to be allowed
you get
in a Sean Payton defense. Yeah, and you know what? Some teams are okay with that. That's one thing that really separates Pat Surtain from Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner, great cover corner. Pat Surtain, obviously elite cover corner, but Pat Surtain also tackles. I don't think he had a missed tackle last season. In fact, made some really huge tackles. Sauce, he's a cover corner.
Yeah.
Pat Surtain's not a cover corner. Pat Surtain's an everything football player, and that's exactly what Jahdae Barron is.
Exactly, and that's my point precisely. And if you have guys out there who don't want to play like that, a team that has Ashton Jeanty on their roster that's you're going to face twice a year is going to hand the ball and say, run towards that guy.
Yep, exactly.
Leave him unblocked.
Exactly.
Block everyone else.
All right, let's jump back to the RJ Harvey conversation. And guys, I'll give you credit. You convinced me a little bit. Ashton Jeanty. That's who the Broncos got with RJ Harvey.
No longer lazy, baby.
So, not Darren Sproles? Maybe Darren Sproles? Let's hear from Sean and see where this comparison comes from. Let's also keep your ears open to the other things Sean says, because I think it's pretty eye-opening. Let's hear from Sean.
The very first thing you see, all right, the very first thing you see in the evaluation is his running ability. I heard comps to Darren Sproles. It's always difficult when you look at height and weight. I had a chance to coach Darren, and Darren was an exceptional receiver out of the backfield, but when he came out of Kansas State, man, he was an exceptional runner. And so contact balance, vision, this player's, again, we had a day, I can't recall how many days back, but call it 2 hours of every carry, every catch. And look, some offenses in college don't necessarily feature the halfback a lot in the passing game. It's oftentimes when they get to the NFL, they're used maybe a little differently, and it might just be style of play, right? But when you look at the running skill set, it was wow. And explosive runs, all of those things. And, so then you begin to study the passing game stuff. And he's got soft hands. He does a lot of those things well. You get to see that maybe more in the pro day than you do on the film just because of the offense. So he was, in the early part of this process, man, everyone had seen the skill set of Jeanty, and he's a fabulous player. And then you're, all right, if that's unrealistic, which obviously where he was selected, everyone knew we were hoping to get it back. Man, where are we falling in love with somebody? And you really try to just go through each one with an open mind. And I can remember the afternoon. I can't remember what afternoon, but I can remember the 2 hours on this player. And then it was like, all right, be quiet. Let's just. And that was hard. There's some players maybe that are easier to project when they get selected. Some are more difficult. I think he was going to be tricky as to, historically speaking, end of two, third round. It just takes one other team. When we drafted Kamara in the third round, he split time. He was actually the 40% ball carrier, not the primary ball carrier. And so everyone had a grade on him. But like when I think it was a week ago, someone put his name in an article as a riser, and it was like, you don't want to read that. But he was explosive.
In the words of Sean Payton, that answer was wow. I mean, he packed a lot in there. Said that he heard a comp of Darren Sproles, which I want to get to. Said he's explosive. Said he's a runner as
soft
hands. And said when we realized we weren't going to be able to get Ashton Jeanty because he went too high, we were never going to jump the Raiders, is essentially what he was saying. We wanted to fall in love with someone else, and that love came to RJ Harvey. I love that because that means that they're not just like dipping the toe in the water on him. No, they're all in with him, and that's what you need to be when you go get a running back at pick 60. Like I said yesterday, he's picked 4 running backs, Sean Payton, in the top 100 picks. Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, and now RJ Harvey. He was all in on those other 3 guys. I have confidence he's going to be all in on the 4th.
I mean, so all in and so in love with him that he's literally looking on articles on the internet being like, no, don't call him a riser.
Yeah.
Like, he probably saw some of those clips that Fran was referencing of like former running backs being like this RJ Harvey. Like, he's like, shut up. So that's cool to hear.
Yeah. And I mean, there was always this like underground RJ Harvey community where it's like Maurice Jones-Drew, who, again, a little biased because they're in some ways the same player. MJD kept saying like, this guy's awesome. Or, like Chris Sims was really big on him. He had him as the number 3 running back. So there was this group all along. So it's not that crazy for that to be the choice that you would make out of that tier of over 10 running backs that could have gone in any order, especially when you just look at the production.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, yesterday we had Benny on. He was our resident receiver expert. He gave us the lowdown on Pat Bryant. Lest we forget, we have a Power 5 running back on set with us.
We do.
Right now, who played in the same conference as RJ Harvey last year, right? So, Dion, I'm curious what you think of RJ Harvey.
No, I feel like RJ Harvey's great. Like, he's very explosive. We were talking about him earlier, just in reference to Genty. I think he's a little bit more shiftier than Genty, and just the explosiveness. And I think how Sean talked about his hands is very vital because, like, there's a stereotype of running backs not being able to catch. And so being able to have that mismatch out the backfield on the linebacker is very useful. But also at the same time, his explosiveness and ability to, like, get vertical, go north and south, and make guys miss is, like, he's a top-tier running back in my opinion.
If you had to pick, like, what's his one move? Or, like, what's, like, the iconic, like, in basketball you have, like, the guys who it's just, like, the fadeaway or, like, the crazy dunk. Like, is there one thing about him where it's, like, this is going to be, like, what people remember?
I think he's more of, like, a jump cut, dead leg type of guy.
Okay.
That's what I see from him a lot.
The jump cut, to me, that's what got me most excited because I'll be honest, agree with CU shutting him down or slowing him down, whatever you want to call it. From a running game standpoint, they did a very good job of containing him. That was the most I saw of RJ Harvey all year. So you get a certain idea in your head. When I went back and started watching him after the Broncos picked him, I saw that jump cut. And that is what stood out to me as like, oh, okay. This is what unlocks the vertical speed. All it takes is one sweet cut in the hole, make that first guy miss, and then he has what it takes to get it out to the sidelines and house it. And
it's that combined with the patience. So it's the ability to take the ball, stand there for a second, and then make your jump cut. Or take 2 steps this way, go at half speed, and then jump cut back the other way. Yep. I think that's where you get so excited, because the vision really is crazy. Like, it's ridiculous. I'm not sure if we talked about it in this or if it was just on the draft show, but I mean, to me, the big knock on Harvey, if you had to pick one, it's not the size or anything, because we've seen like that. It's just fine. And all the metrics for decades, 2 decades, have shown that if you break tackles in college, you're going to break tackles in the NFL. Like, that's one of those predictors. It just doesn't really change as much as people seem to think it will. The concern is that he has a tendency to try to hit home runs when sometimes he shouldn't be trying to hit home runs. The reason for that, though, is he just has that superhuman type vision where he's moving to the right and has eyes in the back of his head where he just sees like, oh, it's wide open on the backside here. So if I kick this all the way back past 5 gaps, I'm going to be free and running. And half the time he does it, and half the time he loses 3 yards. And again, like it was a complaint for all sorts of guys. It was a complaint for Saquon, Barry Sanders back in the day. It's like too creative, too much of that stuff. Now, he's probably not on the same tier as those guys, but the vision combined with that ability to just get from hole to hole to hole is pretty special.
I love what Dion said, top tier running back. And that brings me to the Darren Sproles comparison and why we have it in the headline, because Sean brought it up. But I also love that Sean said someone else mentioned Darren, and he never said I agree with him, but he did say like that he sees some similarities coming out of college, both really good runners. Why I don't agree with that comparison and why I hope that Sean also doesn't agree is because Darren Sproles was not a top tier running back. Darren Sproles was a top tier receiver at the running back position. He was not a top tier running back, and Sean didn't even try to make him a top tier running back. Darren Sproles was with Sean Payton for 3 years. It felt like 10. but he was only with him for 3 years. He had 1,000 rushing yards combined. That's not the role that RJ Harvey is. RJ Harvey should be 1,000 yards this season, 1,200 next season, 1,400 the next season. He didn't run Darren Sproles like a running back. He threw him the ball out of the backfield. He had 2,000 receiving yards in those 3 seasons, which is a ton. And RJ Harvey only 500 receiving yards in the past 2 seasons combined. I expect those numbers to go up from him. But no, he's not Darren Sproles at all. And I think you guys kind of alluded to it earlier that you don't agree he's Darren Sproles either. RJ Harvey's a fantastic runner of the football. He's a weapon, but that weapon starts from a runner, not as a receiver.
Darren Sproles played 14 seasons. The most carries he had in the season was 94.
Wow.
Last year, the Broncos had 2 running backs over 100. Bo Nix was at 92.
Wow.
So then again, on average, it's more like 55 or so. So RJ Harvey, he is, as you said, a better runner of the football. And mostly it's because he can run the ball between the tackles.
Yeah.
And that just opens things up. Whereas if you're giving the ball to Darren Sproles, either it's shotgun, draw on 3rd and 10, and you know there's going to be running lanes up the middle, or you're trying to get him to the boundary. And so just the diversity that RJ Harvey has, like there's just a big difference of what you can do with a guy who's 5'8" and 207 versus a guy who's 5'6" and 187.
That's what I was going to say. And that's what I mean about there's levels to this small running back type of thing. You know, like Darren Sproles was one of the smallest players in the NFL while he was doing that.
Yeah.
And you couldn't use him the way that you hopefully want to use RJ Harvey. You couldn't run him between the tackles. And that's why the comp just doesn't make all that much sense to me. And you know, Fran kind of talked about it. I'm excited about what Sean thinks he's capable of in the receiving game, but there's not a lot of tape that says this guy's a great receiver. Darren Sproles was doing all of that in college as well. So I don't see that comp at all, and that's fine. They don't have to be alike. There's very few people really ever who have been like Darren Sproles.
Totally. And I think making that comp is similar to if in 10 years somebody says, oh, this receiver reminds me of Tez Johnson. It's like, okay, cool. But unless the receiver is like 155, 160 pounds, it doesn't really add up.
Yeah.
You know, like if the guy's like 180 and you're making that comparison, you're like, well, maybe there was a different route to go here. Maybe there are other similar players. Because again, Darren Sproles is just kind of a historic outlier at 5'6" and 187 pounds.
God, Deuce Vaughn, you can make that comp.
Exactly.
Same college and everything.
Exactly.
There's also one more clip I want to hear, and this one's from George Payton, because he says something that is so key and big for RJ Harvey. Let's hear from George.
And Harvey, this was kind of our pet cat throughout the process. His running style, we feel he's dynamic. He has really good vision, really good instincts, really good contact balance, highly explosive. You know, we thought maybe he had the best vision in the draft. And you see the +10s. I think he leads, you know, he led everyone with +10 runs. Home run ability. We feel like he can improve in the pass game. He wasn't featured there, but we really like this back.
The best vision in the draft. And
he said maybe.
Maybe, but he didn't say like outside of Ashton Genty. He didn't say outside of the first round running backs. He said he might have the best vision in the draft. And that to me is the number one thing for a running back. That's what makes a running back. Like if you were to give me one thing for a quarterback, I'm not taking arm strength. I'm taking the brain and ability to process. If you give me running back, I'm taking the vision, over speed, over size, over everything else. And then we add the speed and all the other things that he has. That's just something that is so big.
Yeah.
It's why I'm having such a hard time understanding what even the knock on RJ Harvey is. He has the speed, he has the shiftiness, he has the vision.
Only 7 guys in college football broke more tackles last year.
Breaks tackles. What more could you want?
You would say, well, it's because he's short, and as you guys pointed out, Ashton Genty the same size.
Yeah.
You'd say, well, it's because he played at UCF. He wasn't in the SEC. Well, Ashton Genty played in the Mountain West. So it's a great question. I don't know.
Yep. Tougher competition than Marion Hampton faced.
What number? This is what I need you to get scoops on, Zach. What number is RJ Harvey going to wear?
We'll know in about a week or so.
I mess around. So after we were here for the Avs game last night, good time other than the loss. Bad time, I guess. Went home. I was like, okay, before I go to bed, I'm going to play a game of Madden with the new Broncos. And so I played the Raiders, all Madden. RJ Harvey had 37 carries for 226 yards.
That'll do.
And yeah, it was a pretty good game for him. I put him at number 44.
Oh,
No,
please. Well,
no,
first
no.
of all, retired.
It's retired.
Yeah, I
yeah.
know, but that's why I was like, I want something kind of legendary.
That's also unfortunately, a terrible number, especially for a smaller, shorter guy.
Darren
two
Sproles was
picks
43.
The
Yeah,
Broncos
not
had
good.
in this draft.
Not good.
First 2 picks the Broncos had in this draft both wore number 7 in
Yep.
college.
Yep.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not available to either of them.
Did you guys see what Warren Moon did with Cam Ward
No.
at his introductory press conference? Warren Moon wore number 1. The jersey's retired. Warren Moon came in himself with the number 1 for Cam Ward. Said, "Here, this is yours. You can wear it." Really cool moment. I was wondering if when I was sitting in that press conference with Jade Barron, if John Elway was going to come through with that
No.
number 7 and say,
No.
"This is yours, kid."
That number shouldn't have even been retired, though, because, like, Houston Oilers versus Tennessee Titans, you don't get to keep that retired number. You just, like, the Avs don't keep the Quebec Nordiques retired numbers.
So this is like a whole thing with the Texans have like an Oiler. No, the Titans have an
Yeah.
Oilers throwback, but that's actually the Texans
Yep.
now.
Yep.
And whatever it is. Either way, that's sweet. Also,
Yeah,
kind
it's
of a lot
very
of
cool.
pressure on Cam Ward.
As a number 1 pick, though,
Yeah.
like,
Add it to the list.
they didn't give it to a day 2 pick or something. Like, it makes sense.
Fair enough.
It's a really cool thing from Warren Moon.
I like number 4 for RJ Harvey.
Yeah.
Is that available?
It is. That was Zach Wilson's number.
That would be sick, I think.
2 4s.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get behind 1 4. I think single digits is what it needs to be.
Yeah.
And
I think 4 is the only option, yeah.
four is the only option.
Yeah.
But what if Jade wants that?
Jade should be 11.
That is taken by Troy Franklin.
That's right, he changed.
Also,
don't take 16.
That's a weird
terrible
secondary number.
Yeah, let's do
In that, like, nickel spot, it looks better, I think.
20.
22?
That's
Brandon Jones.
Brandon Jones.
on the wall.
Maybe he takes it from Audric Estime and goes 23. I don't know.
No.
We'll see. Really quick,
24 is technically not retired.
man.
It is technically
if
not.
you're ever gonna give it to someone, you would give it to a first round
Corner, yeah.
It looks better on the outside than the inside. That's what I kind of like. I guess 11 is gone.
He's
so you
gonna be
can't have
playing it. He's gonna be playing everywhere though, outside,
We'll
inside.
see.
Really quick, I think we might still have our diehard sale going on. They might be taking it off at any point right now, so make sure to go to thednvr.com. Get in on the diehard coverage. There is literally like 15, 20 pieces on the website just from the Broncos, just from Henry and I over the past week that you can get in on to learn all about these draft picks. We're going to continue to talk about them, but we've only got an hour a day, and if you want to learn all about them, we've got a piece on every single pick up right now over at thednvr.com. You get half off if you dive, or you get more than half off if you get in on the deal before it's gone right now. Let's dive in to some super chats where we've got 2 of them.
Can I just ask one more question?
Of course.
Did you talk to RJ Harvey yet? Did anyone?
A conference
Oh,
call.
the short conference call.
Yep.
Did he mention John Elway?
He did not mention John Elway.
Okay, just curious.
Why so?
Well, I mean,
a number retiring way?
He was originally a quarterback. That's when he started wearing number 7. Now, it very easily could be Michael Vick.
That's who he said.
Not Ben Roethlisberger?
He said Michael Vick because he went to Virginia. I know Michael Vick went to Virginia Tech.
Yep.
But that's also, I'm happy you brought this up. That's one more thing that Sean is going to have up his sleeve is we know Sean likes to put some different types of guys at the quarterback position, even when you have a Drew Brees, a Hall of Fame quarterback. He likes to put Taysom Hill in that position a couple of times to throw defenses off. RJ Harvey, whether he's lined up as a traditional quarterback or whether, it's a wildcat, or whether it's a toss out to him and he's going to the right and then pulls up to pass, he was recruited out of high school to be a quarterback at Virginia, was a 3-star guy, threw 42 touchdowns his final year of high school. Sean's going to use this many times throughout his career.
Over under half a passing attempt this season.
Over.
Really?
Over.
Okay.
He
Yeah.
might throw the ball on his first ever touch.
Yep. I wouldn't be shocked.
Wow. Actually, so I was going under, but now I kind of think it might be the first touch, and then we don't see it again this year.
I mean, we've
Well,
seen
and it
Sean
turns into a
start the
touchdown.
season with an
Exactly.
onside kick. So
And
you
everything
can say
would have been
anything.
different if it would have worked.
Yep.
That was still one of the coolest moves ever. It's a shame it didn't work. Like when your iconic decision as a coach is the like halftime Super Bowl onside surprise kick.
Yep.
Like to pull that off in your first game with a new team is electric.
And it was the last time he could have ever done it.
Yeah.
The last season he could have ever done it.
That's a shame.
Yes.
Although I think the surprise onside kick will make a return because the current kickoff rules are dumb as hell.
They're going to be better.
They're doubling down. They just moved it back a little bit more. 35-yard line
Lose
now.
the hand again.
Who's the Broncos' second kick returner? That's a question for another day.
Yes, it is. And we are going to finish this show over in overtime over at thednvr.com to hit these super chats. So go to thednvr.com to watch the rest of this show over in overtime. And let's hit these super chats. First one coming in from Spencer Niles, who says, the day before the draft, I became a diehard fan and got an incomplete shirt from the website. Maybe that was my sign, Ryan.
That was your sign.
Yep.
See, everyone gets signs. You just have to be willing to accept them at the right time.
And man,
My sign was wrong. It's okay.
It was.
what was your sign you were given?
Warren Avenue.
I turned on Warren and Avenue.
Wow. I mean, the Bears tried to help you out with that by taking Colston Loveland instead of Tyler.
Yeah, interesting move there. Last one here.
Last one coming in from Kenj, who says, RK, our team initials are DB. Being a good DB is built into our franchise.
Facts.
Yep.
That's a great point. It
Great-
is a
great
fantastic point. That's going to do it for us today. Tomorrow, we're having our guy Brian Baldinger on the show. And speaking of comparisons, Sean Payton made a straight-up comparison with the Broncos receiver Pat Bryant and Michael Thomas. You're going to hear from Sean about it tomorrow. And this isn't like a Darren Sproles. He put his stamp on this one. So if you're skeptical of Pat Bryant, you're going to want to listen to tomorrow's show. And then we're going to have a big announcement tomorrow for something that's to come later in the week. Stay tuned. We'll see you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.